Hey y'all, welcome to Prepper Friday. My name is Madden from Self-Reliance Publishing, and today we're going to talk about being a prepper without looking like a prepper. Now this goes hand in hand with what I was talking about last Friday, looking at prepping as a lifestyle. And I believe that if you do it correctly, again, it's my perspective, I'm not trying to say that my way is the only way, but if you view prepping as a lifestyle and you make small lifestyle tweaks, you can A, save money, and B, avoid the appearance of being a prepper. Now, what do I mean by this? Let's look at a couple of examples. One would be the food that you eat, your normal diet. If you go out and you buy freeze-dried food, one of those package deals of a year's worth of freeze-dried food, it's an extra expense that you're incurring. It's an extra expense because you're not likely to ever eat that freeze-dried food. It also gives you the appearance of being a prepper because if someone comes over to your house and sees your stash and they inquire about it, you don't have really anything to say other than I'm preparing for an emergency. And people might look at you kind of strange for having a year's worth of freeze-dried food on hand. However, if you make small tweaks in your diet and you start to base your meals on staple foods like rice, beans, potatoes, corn, wheat, and stuff that you can buy in bulk and store for a long period of time, you'll save money because you're eating it. I always recommend that you store what you eat and you eat what you store, which cuts out the freeze-dried food. You're saving the money because you're eating this stuff and you're just purchasing a little bit extra on a weekly or monthly basis. You're buying maybe twice what you need, and before you know it, you've got a stash of food on hand. And you can avoid the appearance of being a prepper because if someone comes over and sees your food stash and they inquire about it, you just say, I'm being frugal. You utilize staples a lot in my meal preparation, and I buy in bulk to save money. And so you don't have to say you're intentionally storing food in case of a disaster. Another example of this would be producing your own food. Something that a lot of preppers do would be to buy heirloom seeds and stash them away. Well, if you just buy those heirloom seeds and put them aside, that's an added expense that you're incurring because you're buying the seeds and you're not really utilizing them. A better way, in my opinion, from my perspective, would be to buy those seeds and actually garden. Gardening is a skill, and if you garden, even on a small scale today, you're going to be acquiring the skills, you're going to be building up the infrastructure, you'll have the tools and the knowledge necessary to garden. It's easier to expand on a small garden than it is to start completely from scratch. And not only that, you'll recoup the cost of the seeds because you'll have produce to show from the garden. So you'll have potatoes that you don't have to buy. You'll have tomatoes and lettuce and cabbage and carrots fresh from the garden that you would otherwise be buying in the grocery store. So you'll be recouping the cost of the seeds and hopefully a little bit more so. So you'll again be saving money. And likewise, if someone comes over to your house and sees your heirloom seeds, you say, oh, you had some leftovers from last year's garden, or oh, you're buying them for next year's garden. And the question is answered. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm saving these in case of a collapse. I'll be prepared. I can start a garden and be able to provide for my family. So again, you're reducing your cost and you're avoiding the appearance of being a prepper. Another example of this would be of tweaking your lifestyle a little bit is looking at your hobbies. Say you like to hunt and you fish. Those are easily translated into self-reliance, obviously. But a lot of times the way people hunt and fish today aren't necessarily the best way for self-reliance. An example would be a deer hunter. A lot of deer hunters today bait deer in with corn, and they'll go through 2,000 pounds or more of corn in a deer season to bag a few deer. And That's fine if you're just doing it as a hobby. I'm not making a moral judgment on hunting over bait. But if you have an eye towards self-reliance and prepping, you might consider foregoing that bait pile next year and learning to still hunt and hunt without bait. Because you're really fooling yourself if you get 300 pounds, say you get 60 or 300 pounds of meat, but if you have to put 2,000 pounds of corn into it, that's not a very good, that's not really self-reliance unless you have a way of growing that 2,000 pounds of corn. So really, I'm just suggesting that you tweak the way you look at life. One last example would be your outdoor activities. If you make a point of hiking and getting outdoors and whatnot, if you have a backpack with, say, you carry a get home bag or a bug out bag in your car, if you make a point of getting outside, getting outdoors, hunting, fishing, going hiking and whatnot, and you've got that backpack full of gear that you have primarily in case of emergency, if someone sees it and spots it, you have a good explanation. Oh, I've got the toilet paper in there because last time I went hunting, I was in the woods and I had to go, nature called, and having the toilet paper there was handy. Or I got the first aid kit with me because I sprained my ankle when I was hiking one time and I really wish I had a first aid kit, so I added one to my backpack and I just always carry it with me when I go hiking. And that's why I have a first aid kit. You've got a reason to have that stuff with you on a regular basis, because if you go frequently, you just say, I keep it in my car just in case I decide to hit the trail on the way home, whatever. You've got an excuse for having it, a reason to have it, and people are okay with that. As a whole, if you look at a lot of stuff that goes into self-reliance, many of the individual activities are perfectly socially acceptable. Hunting, fishing, gardening, hiking, having chickens. Most of that stuff is socially acceptable. You combine it all together and it's still socially acceptable, and people won't necessarily look at you and say, oh, that man's a prepper. If you are a prepper like I recommend, people might look at you and say, oh, he's a homesteader, or oh, he's an outdoorsman, or maybe you look like both, but they're not going to pin you as a prepper. One of the hardest channel decisions that I've made has been doing this Prepper Friday, because I've never been called out as a prepper. It's not something that I talk about openly. It's not something that I share with anybody really. So coming out with these videos and putting them on YouTube and making them public was a really hard decision for me, but it's one that I felt like I had to make in order to further my reach and to help other like-minded people. If you do it like I'm suggesting, you don't have to worry about being called a prepper. No one has to know, no one has to suspect. As always, I appreciate every like, every comment, and every subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.